Let's just get started with this discussion and talk about important issues of securing your data. So let me start with you, Mr. Mungale. Um, how how is a solid cybersecurity strategy made, and how does it help to protect your critical assets?
Look, any strategy is more effective only if it is time tested, if it is proven to work. And any strategy can be called solid only and only when you are sure that all the necessary parameters, all the necessary factors have been considered in that strategy. So, first and foremost thing, before defining any strategy as a solid strategy, it is necessary that we must understand what are the bases and the foundation of the strategy. If any organization has to define a strategy on their own experience, it would take years for them, because to gather that kind of hardcore experience to define a solid strategy, it is definitely not something which is going to be within the purview of any organization experience. So a solid strategy can be considered as the one which is based on and defined using certain well proven time tested framework. Like if you have a cybersecurity strategy based on an NIST framework, or if you have a cybersecurity strategy based on the government of India cybersecurity framework, then it can be considered as something which is solid. And it definitely will help, because when a person decides what kind of controls are to be put into for the purpose of defining the defense system for any kind of an cybersecurity incidents, he has to keep in mind various factors. And that is all limited by the intelligence, wisdom, and the knowledge of an individual person or a team of people. But when you use some kind of an framework, it has envisaged hundreds of parameters, various factors, and provided you with that particular ready-made framework to dwell upon. And that is where I believe that if we define a cybersecurity strategy on some kind of an well-proven framework, it can be considered as solid. We don't have to reinvent the wheel when defining the cybersecurity strategy. And any cybersecurity strategy dwelling upon a standard framework will always help an organization to prepare its defense system to safeguard not only the critical data, but also the assets that the organization is having, and the continuity of the service that is being rendered by the organization through the digital medium. That's what I feel.
Right. Yash, your thoughts here on a solid cybersecurity strategy? Mr. Mungale is saying you need something that's tried and tested. You can't take chances. So how do you find that tried and tested strategy?
Sorry, I was on mute before. So I think I do agree with most what Mr. Mungale says. I think rather than trying to reinvent the boat, trying to reinvent the wheel, it's useful to actually use one of the standard frameworks. And But I think what is important is that you look at that standard framework, and then you have to kind of model that to whatever works well for your organization, and what are the things which are really important for your company. But overall, as you're trying to implement this cybersecurity strategy, you have to actually look at a very holistic view, right? And I think what is important is that all the malicious users or hackers, they're actually looking for the weakest chain in the link, right? And they're actually on the way to, they're looking out for exploiting that. So you have to ensure that your whatever you're building, whatever strategy you're building is a comprehensive document. And this includes multiple things, like, for example, of course, there'll be infrastructure security, server security, but you also have to look into things of doing, how will you do continuous monitoring? How will you do continuous security patching? And As this forum is on data, I think data is becoming more and more important. We're seeing a large amount of data which is actually getting collected. So in fact, the data which is going to be collected in 2000, there's a study which says that there'll be 163 zettabytes of data which is going to be collected by in 2025, which is more than 10 times of the data which has been generated in 2017. And we're seeing a large number of additional data that's going there. For example, there's a lot of health data that is reaching, that is getting collected by companies and by various services. So you have to be very careful about how you actually manage and secure this data. And the last thing which I wanted to talk about in the security strategy document is, I think a big part is also educating all your employees about why cybersecurity is important and what are the safeguards which people have to do. So you can have, for example, you can have like the best security, but if your employee is setting their password as password, then it kind of defeats everything. So you need to ensure that there is cognizance and awareness of what are the best security processes for each and every employee in your company. And then, so your cyber strategy document should include all of that stuff as well.
Right. And now talking about data, Mr. Navaneethan, the previous panel also said that, data is really critical, and soon it needs to be protected, because once your customer data is out, soon you're going to have a lot of competition. You're going to be out of business. So what are the data privacy expectations in 2021? And why is data such a key safety concern? Like you said, we're going to have huge amounts of data being generated. Where is the threat?
I believe I can take this question. So thank you so much for that. So if you take this, elders, this, of course, we are in the pandemic situation. So even though if it is not in pandemic situation, so just I'm trying to see the data origination as well as the data handling. If you just go back 10 years or 15 years back, where we have the single floppy, the 1.44 MB single floppy, which will hold this entire project. It will have the huge data, right? That itself 1.14 MB, where we have a multiple files, multiple folders, to fetch the data. And then now, if you see this, we are talking about in terms of terabytes, petabytes, like in terms of data storages, which is very handy. It's not like where we have to go extraordinary to get this data and all the things and all, right? This is like on the data transformation. It's absolutely just 10-15 years. So it's absolutely gone beyond that way. And second one is in terms of the data centers. If you talk about the data center earlier, it's like just 10 years before. If you want to work out in office, there is a physical desktops where we should be working on the physical desktop, and data will be stored on purely in the data centers. So once you come out of this office, you don't have access to any data, right? It's gone. It's detached. It's drastically changed. Like the people are handling in terms of laptop, the people are handling on the BYD. Like just you can handle your own device and you can access your organization data. It's like a two-way, right? Now just you can work from anywhere and any data, any organization. It's like just maybe on the beach, on the sea, on the road, on the house, wherever it is, just you can start working on that. But still, really, we don't have a little bit, the demarcations between the which is personal, which is official. So that's a huge transformations, I can say, from the data handling, at the same time, the data access, what we are doing now. So by considering this, all the things, it may not be on 2021. It's like this continues. It's in the very the bigger way. The data privacy, data protection play a very significant role across the organization, across the country, across the world, because now this data is flooding anywhere, everywhere. And the next one is the data is the one helping us to take the right decision. If you take this, most of the organizations, most of the CEO and then CTO, CFO take decisions or buying the software or deploying the strategy. It's purely based on the data. Who likes what, and then what kind of this requirement it is there. So based on if data is manipulated and things, the output, what are the things output it comes. So that's on the the different strategies. And then third one is I think Milind had highlighted. Now just most of the organizations, they work on the silos way. So now just we are making very holistic way, because this data transmission is also gone beyond that. And in terms of data handling also it's gone beyond that. Now really we are looking in terms of how we are going to handle this whole data in the holistic way. Because if you take this, most of the organization, the last sessions, one of the gentlemen he mentions, like, where we don't have a handles on the data. Earlier, if you want to buy a software or applications, we have to go through the IT department. Now just nowhere, right? I mean, this IT may not be aware like what's the software, what's the applications being used at development side. It's everything on the API based. Just I can go and then just pay the credit card and then buy the software, plug into the my application. It's like absolutely on the API. Anytime I can buy, I can plug into my center of environment. So that's where we need a very holistic approach in terms of the data movement, and then of course we'll talk further on data access.
Right. Sunil, Mr. Navaneethan has told us, about data handling. Now, I want to understand what is the risk, because you do back up your customers' data, don't you? I mean, it's out there. People could hack into it, but how do they need to grovel for the data they have? Because you back it up, right? You can still use it. How can they inflict pain on you because they have your data?
Can you just repeat that again? I was not able to catch you that clearly.
Yeah, the question is, why is your data so critical? Mr. Navaneethan told us how how things have transformed when it comes to data handling, data generation. But why is your customers' data so critical? You do have a backup of it, right? I mean, what kind of pain can a hacker inflict on you because they have your data?
Got it. So I will try to break it in multiple points. See, as a strategy or from a data privacy expectations point of view, there are various principles where we generally a company works in. From an concern point of view, earlier it was as Venkatesh, like earlier there was no such risk of data where because everything was in-house. Now considering everything is off premises and on SaaS, like a lot of companies have gone to the SaaS model where they store the data. So they store the employee data, they store customer data, and lot of such applications are available on the cloud. And people, so that's how things has changed, and it is now very important for again the customers. So customers or consumers or any employees, everybody are very much aware of what is do's and don'ts and what is good and bad. So they are also aware of their privacy thing, and they understand those things, and they have also taken interest in that, and that is the reason it is very important now. So I will just talk about the recent WhatsApp privacy change which they brought in. So there was a lot of hue and cry around that WhatsApp, and the WhatsApp has to go back and give the option to the users. So that is a kind of a change which has bring in, because a lot of consumers have shown the interest in understanding how the data could be used, and how can that be can be manipulated or can be misused. So to cover that, there are a lot of things companies like for example Balik, which we do is we have we provide those trust to the customers. We have those relevant technologies implemented. We have a monitoring and a governance mechanism in place, which we do it, and with the help of that, we ensure that there are no major glitches or there are no major privacy breaches. So the data breach and data theft is something which we very much focus on, and it's a board focus, and we we take it as a priority for us from a business point of view.
Right. So data security is important, especially customer data. But then, Yash, why do so many of these phishing attacks happen? Sunil was saying we sensitized our employees, but we saw with the Twitter attack last year, it was a phishing attack. An employee, sent a mail, and they got the employee credentials, and then they hacked accounts of people. So how does it happen if everybody's so sensitive, even if customers are now more sensitive of how their data is being used? Then where are the gaps, and how do you identify the gaps?
Yeah. So this.
I'd request you. This question is for Yash. We'll ask you to come in once Yash answers.
Yeah, sure.
You're on mute again.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay. So I think there are two ways to look at this, right? The first thing is what Sunil mentioned about how customers are very passionate about the data. I think there's a large awareness of how people are very concerned about how an organization is storing the data, how an organization is going to use the data, and if any data is getting shared, what are the mechanisms in which an organization is sharing the data, etc. So from a personal privacy perspective, I think there's a large awareness which is happening. But unfortunately, when it comes to implementation and when it comes to the real world case, there's still many there's still when people have to implement it on themselves, I think there a lot of the times the safeguards are not completely followed. There was a recent breach of data from one of the e-commerce companies in India, and I think there a large number of accounts and passwords were leaked, and there a large number of passwords were actually the term password. So a lot of users who are actually signing up, all these users are very conscious and concerned about their privacy, are still using weak passwords. And I think there's a lot of awareness which has to be done. I think companies do the awareness, but I think it has to come to a point where so people may be setting a good password maybe for their official emails, but when it comes to their personal emails, maybe they're not following the same practices. So which is why it is very important, as I talked earlier also, right? Education and ensuring that everyone is aware of how that security is an onus of everybody, and everyone has to play a part in the security. Your question about why are we seeing, why are the breaches getting more, why are we seeing more breaches now? I think as we've seen the evolution of data, right? So I think it was someone mentioned that that earlier you could only keep all the data on a floppy. Now as in more and more data is actually getting stored online, the payoffs for a malicious user, the payoff for the hacker are also more, right? So earlier they would only get a small set of users data. Now if you're able to breach a larger organization, you'll be able to get millions of leaked accounts and leaked credentials, and so the payoff is also higher. And the other thing is, I think there's also a huge development which is happening in terms of the tools of the trade. So computers are becoming faster. With the advent of AI and ML, there's a lot more smartness which can come in and this goes both ways, right? So you can use AI ML to protect yourself, and the hackers are also using the same technologies to circumvent some of these things. So it's always a catch and mouse game.
And usually the hackers are one step ahead, right? So Sunil, you wanted to come in here?
Yeah, just wanted to add to what Yash has mentioned. Is like a single customer record, or maybe the data which, when you talk about customer data. So that is why that is important for hackers, is because they can then they can use that particular information to misrepresent or do fraudulent activities. And when I was interacting one of the fraudsters, they told me that they easily earn around 50,000 to 70,000 rupees per day as part of whatever the data which they get. So that is how it is important for these hackers to steal the data. So stealing the data, it's a very good revenue for them, and that will give a very good revenue. And the more they get the data, the more variety of the data which they get, and that will help them to get into more new customers, new people, and get more money out of that. So that is the point. And as rightly mentioned by Yash and everybody's like, to have a control, we need to have awareness in place. We need to educate people, not only the employees, but we need to educate the customers also. So for example, Balik, we also educate the customers. So who are there, our customers, we give them those relevant awareness. We give them SMSs with them, roll out those relevant campaigns to them. So that is what we do it as part of our awareness campaigns. But that is very important.
Right.
I just wanted to add
go ahead, Yash.
I think the other big change which has happened is I think all of us are also becoming increasingly, things are moving increasingly to the digital and to the digital environment, right? So if you look at 30 years ago, right, if you probably if a hacker had someone's credit card information, he would actually have to go to a physical store and make a copy of the card, and then 30 or maybe 40 years ago, he would have to actually physically try to use that. Right now, with the advent where we have a lot of online payments, we have a lot of you can just transact online. So with the same information, there's a lot more pain which this malicious user can actually do. So I think as we are becoming increasingly online, the risks are also becoming higher. And I think now there's a lot of health data which is also getting. We have a lot of these health tech companies which are coming up, and which they have a lot of health data. So it's just becoming more and more attractive.
Right, but we're talking from the end perspective of the customer. Now, as an end user, I'm aware that I should do this, and many of my service providers will tell me, please change your password every 3 months. Don't reveal your password. Many also have two-step authentication. I'm trying to understand, why is it so important for organizations? What is at stake for them? Now, Mr. Mungale, we've heard about CNA Financial. It's a leading insurance company in the US. They had a ransomware attack, and they paid $60 million to those who asked for ransom. And I'm not very sure about what happened, but they were locked out of their system. They could not access the data of their customers, and hence they couldn't do their business. So they just had no choice. So I'm trying to understand what's in it for companies to keep the data safe. As a customer, I give my data to XYZ because everything is digital now. So what I may share with you, I share with others too. Why is it so important what I've shared with you as a company?
Okay, so it's a very interesting question. First and foremost thing, because of the awareness that people have developed around this digital thing, and all said and done, right from the beginning, if you see the whole digitization, computerization, the whole journey since last 25 years has been all very glamorous one. It was not so glamorous before 25 years, when people used to use punch card systems and go into a particular room. That room would not be a very jazzy one. It would be a shabby room. They would punch all that data. Computerization was just another machine where something is happening, and that is for the benefit of the management. But now, when online systems started coming in, when people started getting the advantage of having computers at their home, when they started becoming more and more affordable, the younger generation of that time and maybe now have all moved on to something which is digitization. Now, when we move to the digitization, we have to always understand that the data that has been accumulated is the responsibility of an individual. But the second mentality, the second mindset of individuals come into the picture. Every time you see, right from our childhood, what have we learned or what have we been told? If in our childhood someone would gift us a 100 rupee note, were we allowed to keep it in our pocket? No. We were told that please hand it over to your parents because they can keep it safe. Now that mentality has translated to, if you hand over your data to an organization which is a superior structure than you as an individual, they will keep it safe. And suddenly, if something happens like what you quoted some time back about an organization getting hacked because of ransomware and not able to recover the customer data, there is an breach of trust. I gave my data to so and so person and it has been breached. So the individual organization has not taken care of my data. Now, mentality and the psychology are the two things. I would like to touch upon first question that you had taken. At that time, I did not say with regards to what Sunil and Yash have said adequately, but I would like to just add a couple of things to it. When we talk about ransomware, where does the ransomware come in from? Ransomware comes 99% of the time. Ransomware is an impact of an phishing email. And when the phishing email comes to an individual, whether to open it or not, whether to look at that particular email, whether to click on that link or not, is completely a decision-making factor. There are various engines, obviously, which are there in the system to ensure that such emails don't reach the individual's inbox. But in spite of that, there will be certain things, some brilliant hackers who would craft out an email in such a way that they will escape the whole security system on the network and reach the inbox of an end user. Now, when that end user clicks on that particular link, That is where the ransomware starts acting. Two types. One is either the ransomware would encrypt the whole laptop or desktop that it is on, or it will remain dormant and start looking for lateral movements. Now, that is exactly what had happened with the organization that you quoted, where it did not do anything with the laptop or desktop, whatever individual end user machine was there. It started looking for lateral movements, and lateral movements has something which has led it to the server where it could go and completely encrypt the data of the customers. They paid a heavy amount of ransomware. Heavy amount of ransom to that. I was just, thinking if that money they would have spent earlier in having a mechanism of creating the gold copies of the data, making sure that your backup is tested before, whether it is clean or not, before it is getting backed up, and then only letting the backup go out of the system into some other unattached device, it would have been very easy for them to recover. In spite of so much of IT budget and in spite of so much of tools and technologies, they could not do that thing. So from that point of view, I think that the person who is the weakest link remains to be a weakest link. It was not so easy to be able to ask the postman to give me the statement of account which would come by post to the residence of the people, but it is so easy to ask an digital operator to just copy all the data on USB and give it to me. So from that point of view, I would say that awareness and all those things that we are talking about is something which still remains to be a weak part of it. And when it comes to an organization, somewhere organizations are also giving some kind of an, now if you look today, organizations have become more and more intelligent. They have become more and more cautious. They will ask you to sign so many things. They will ask you to tick at so many places only to disown the responsibility, isn't it? They tell you to take the responsibility. Under certain circumstances, they will not be liable, etc. Is something which has been told by the organization. So no more it is an hype that if the data is breached at the organization, then suddenly it is a big sin that has got committed or something. Individuals leave the photocopy of their PAN card because it is not properly come at the photocopy table, or even for that sake Aadhaar at the photocopier table. But as soon as that Aadhaar is submitted digitally to an organization, and if there is a data breach, they are so cautious, my Aadhaar has got breached. So that is something which is a mentality. Any amount of awareness that you give to your employees or to your customers is not going to help that thing. So I think Sunil wants to say something, so I will not keep. Yeah, Sunil, please.
You want to add, Sunil?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you asked is about the why it is important for an organization to have a data privacy in place. So wanted to just refer a couple of the laws. So Section 43A of IT Act is specifically talks about any company who who possesses or who collects or discloses any customer information is liable for any protection if he is not having relevant controls in place. So there are a lot of laws. Even the GDP is also coming. The PDP, the privacy data bill is also coming in, and that will also be impact to the companies who possesses or who interact with the customer data. So not only the insurance business, but entire any BFSI, any insurance manufacturing sector, everywhere it is will be applicable, and that's the reason now companies are taking it very seriously, the data privacy part. So that is what I wanted to add.
Right, definitely. I mean, it can't just be hands off. It's the customer's responsibility, and he was careless. Companies will, I think, also have to really bring up their act when it comes to data security. Mr. Navaneethan, could you talk to us about zero trust security architecture, and is it more effective security system? If it's up to companies to really step up the game, is this it?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much it's required. I mean, it's like well-navigated discussions from data protection, data privacy, and then of course it's a zero trust architecture is very much is required or not. As initially I have highlighted, it is a two-way, right? I mean, if you take a CISO and CIO responsibilities, it's really extended widely. Not only in the organizations, now we have to protect this employee home internet also. Well, that's very much is required, because now it's like, more than a year just we are working from home, and most of the things that are well connected. Maybe I can do the just wall driving. I can get into your wireless access point, like whatever you have it. Maybe you may have your password as very weak passwords, right? Once you get into your home network, it's very easy to penetrate into your office network, right? Once you get into the home network, my systems and your systems on the same network, where I can access, if you have share folders, there are a number of mechanisms to access your laptop. So once we land on your laptop, from there, just I can get into your organization through the VPN, because none of the people will VPN traffic, what's the volume of data it is taking out, right? So I can get into your organizations in the very genuine way, right? I'm a very trusted folks getting into your organizations through your laptop. So that's why all the CISO CIO responsibilities are absolutely extended. It's not only protecting the organization, it's really extended to the employee home also in the current situations. If you talk about zero trust, that's the way just I was saying. I mean, zero trust, it's ultimately just now the people are looking on the micro segmentations. Each and every component who are all having access, what level of access they have it, and then how they want to protect. That's very much is important. Very simple example I can take. Let us take any X organizations. Maybe one click, any of the CIOs, CISOs will have a data of how many vendors they have, how many contractors they have it, how many third party they have it, how many the places where we have kept or host the data is outside. Like, so one click, it's very difficult to have access or get to know that view of who are all having what level of access for the what data. Now that's very difficult, right? Because it's dynamic. Like earlier stages, if you talk about this organization, it will be just 5-year strategies, 3-year strategies, and then it goes for the long-term strategy. Now what is year? Every year this environment does keep changing. Just maybe what are the 2-year strategies if you have it within a year, there is a number of competitors, a number of product, a number of services coming to the pictures. So there is a lot of changes. Environment is so dynamic, and this micro segment play very significant role with the zero trust architectures. This is zero trust is, it's not like we should not trust or something. We should trust, but with after testing of who is what, and then what level of controls we have it. The micro segmentations of the access control is very much is required to prove for that, to ensure this zero trust architecture is ensured. So what level we can do that? Maybe just we can put it on the governance level, zero trust architectures, and in terms of policy level, process level, and then in terms of the technology levels. The technology is maybe once you filter on the governance and policy and process, then technology levels of micro segmentation is, it's very easy to give this access to the who has to have what level, and then how we can do the penetrations.
But Yash, does this work in simple way in real life? Zero trust security, can it be automated? Does it lead to frustration amongst users, where they keep facing a wall every time they're trying to access data? What are the pros and cons?
See, it's a two-way. Yeah, maybe it's just just few seconds. Like if you
take your time.
If you get into this automation, so maybe it's so many tiny toys are coming to the market, right? In the current situation, so many new things are coming to the market. Just the zero trust architectures and all things and all. To some extent, just buying the tool, plugging into the organizations, may not help, right? Really, just where we need just the fundamentals should be, very clear in terms of it's maybe very basic ISO 27001 or the PCDSS, or maybe in terms of SANS and NIST controls. Just enforcements of policy process, then on top of that, technologies. Sorry, Yash, over to you.
So thanks for the insights, Navaneethan. Right. So wanted to yeah. First of all, I think I have an interesting analogy about zero trust, right? So I think traditionally security, how organizations approach security was kind of how we approach security for our home, right? So you ensure that your home is well guarded. You have a good lock on your front door. Only people you know, people you trust are actually allowed to come in. And once they're in, then actually everything is open, right? So whoever comes in can actually switch on your TV, can open the fridge, you can He can even walk into any of the bedrooms. So you use whatever he wants to. And traditionally, security has been like this, but unfortunately, that's not the best practice when it comes for organizations, because as mentioned, right? So even with now, as people are working from home, it's no longer a controlled environment of what it was before. So if an employee's laptop is there, which was very secure before, but now as the employee is using the home internet, maybe something got compromised on the laptop, and now once the laptop connects to the office VPN or connects to the office network, it can actually provide a gateway into the entire system. Uh, so. So I think it's a very much a need of the hour that all companies should be adopting zero trust. However, I think you also raised a very interesting point, saying that it's not a smooth journey, right? So, for example, if companies are used to this whole perimeter security based mechanisms, where once I have access to VPN, everything in the office network is available for me. When you start implementing zero trust, there's a lot of it will be a painful journey for employees also, because earlier everything was just accessible. There was no need to get any more access, and now like each and every access will need to be they will need to get each and access to each and every resource that they need access to. I think what helps is if you kind of do it as a planned approach, where you actually define these zones and this data, the data, and also do a mapping of which user needs what access, and actually try to roll that out initially, even before you move to the full zero trust. With that, it actually helps alleviate some of the thing, but of course it's a painful journey, but it's an important journey as well.
I would like to just add to what Yash said, and of course what Navaneethan has said about zero trust. Zero trust is an architecture. How you deploy that architecture, what you use, to what level you use, is all going to be the determining factors of how much that architecture is successful. Second thing is that to adding to what Yash said, the first level of zero trust is that you only allow those people to have that access which they require for their work purpose. But the additional part in zero trust architecture is that in spite of giving them that access, don't trust them. Even if you have given the access because the person requires to do that particular activity, you should not trust them as per the principles of zero trust architecture. So there is a continuous monitoring of how the access is being used. For that purpose, there is a time which has to be given for pattern learning. So you use machine learning for that pattern learning. And based on that machine learning, you evolve into some kind of regular patterns and irregular patterns, periodic patterns, and try to monitor whether the activity is happening as per those patterns or not. If the activity is not happening as per the pattern, even if it is a naturally allowed activity, raise a flag. So that is the principle of zero trust architecture, by having a behavior analysis on top of RBAC, that is role based access control. And after you identify that there is an behavior anomaly, even at the cost of delay in the work, because that was a genuine work, it was a false positive, ruthlessly go and implement an AI based blocking. So that has to be immediately blocked, and then someone has to go review whether it was really an important work that he was doing, which was out of the normal pattern that he used to exhibit while doing his work, and then release that particular lock. So it zero trust architecture means not only that you trust no one, but don't even trust the activities performed by the people whom you started trusting. So I feel that is what I would like to add over here.
Right, but Mr. Mungale, does this mean that all of this is automated, or is there any leeway for buyers for one-time exceptions?
Yeah, so you have to have that particular leeway definitely if you want the company to continue functioning, because once in a while it is like, if I am sending standard emails all across the day for months together, and suddenly I am required to send some different kind of an email, this mechanism of zero trust is going to immediately catch. this guy was never sending an email to an MD. Suddenly, why is he sending an email to an MD? That is definitely going to happen. Now, I have given you a very simple example. You can extrapolate it to some very critical data access kind of behavior. But as soon as you identify that there is an anomaly in the behavior, it is necessary that review of that anomaly should be happen, regardless of what level that person is. And that is where the psychological effect comes, how ruthlessly the management would like to exercise the controls and implement the remedial action for that. So that is where, if you don't leave it to any individual, biasness will not come. It will be, if it is left to an AI platform, automatically the AI platform is going to go and block it. Now there is someone senior or higher up who has to go and review whether that particular anomaly is an false positive or a true positive.
Genuine case. Okay,
Yeah,
so somebody is going to watch your back, and thankfully it will be AI or ML who will be doing the hard work for you by watching the patterns. So that sounds really good. Now I'm going to take concluding remarks from all of you. Let's start with you, Sunil. Going ahead, given that we are going to have stricter laws regarding data and data storage and data privacy, what is it going to be like? How can you plug all the gaps when it comes to data security as a company?
Okay. So there are multiple ways to see that. So the first of all, not every companies have that capabilities and that maturity as well as the financial budget which we call it as. And so the most important thing is first companies have to assess what is critical for them. What is that something which is from a compliance point of view or from a data privacy point of view, what is that which will have a bigger impact. That is something the companies have to first identify. They have to basis that they can create some information or data flows, and then they can think of from the strategies like what will be the technology, the best technology which they can think of can be implemented at a lower cost or maybe at a reasonable cost. And so that is kind of the fixing of gaps. So first they need to identify what are the gaps. Based on the gaps, they can create those relevant strategy, and then they can implement those strategies. So that is what companies can do for.
Right. Mr. Navaneethan, what would you like to say in conclusion? Going ahead, data is definitely going to be important. How do companies secure their customers, their employees, all the data that they have?
Yeah, so there are a lot of solutions.
Sunil, thank you so much for your comments. The question is from Mr. Navaneethan.
That's great. This is maybe as in addition to the Sunil points, it's not just a one way, right? If you take 50-kilometer radius of dam, water dam, just we can talk about, right? It has some maybe close to 100 feet worth of the water. It's like a 50-kilometer radius, 100 feet height of water. We cannot say that like which seed we need a more protection, right? We need protection at all the sites. If any just 1 centimeter hole at any one places, which lead to the data leakage, right? I mean, there's water leakage, which may lead to the flood. That's the entire area. There are chances, right? 1 centimeter's leakage of water, which will increase widely, and just it will make a flood. The same way, if you take this overall, maybe the data protections or maybe the cybersecurity strategy to enforce that, but we need a 360-degree protections. We need this responsibility, accountability from the employee, at the same time employer, at the same time just it's a vendor side actually. So whoever be part of that, including the physical security, like maybe one of the organizations where we have touched the BCP contributions, so who is providing the milk vendor, right? Who is providing the milk to the organization also very important, because he play very significant role, right? Whether it is what are the milk he is supplying, it's not expired one, so that it will not create any issues at the user health level. So who is at the key level? It's maybe the boardroom, same milk will be supplied, right? So just a small, just examples. That's where each and everyone who is physically getting in, who's logically getting into the organizations hold the accountability. And maybe the second one is where we need a continuous assessment. It may not be like quarterly, 6 months one, just do the assessment. It's maybe the red teaming or the vulnerability assessment or the pen test. 6 months once, quarterly once, definitely it won't help. its environment is dynamic. Really, we need a continuous assessment. Like, tomorrow we would have done some changes. Today it would have, what are the things it would have exposed on the, the open end. So that's why we need a continuous assessment and then continuous preventions across all the departments to ensure that, things are in control, things are in protected to add value for these organizations.
All right. Mr. Mungale, in conclusion, what do you think going ahead would be very critical for companies to protect data that they have access to?
Yeah, as far as the organizations are concerned, when they accept, store, use, and allow the access to any data, regardless of whether it be their vendors' data or customers' data or employees' data, it is necessary that they own it up. They go by that particular principle that the data is their responsibility. And because in last few years we have observed that such kind of ownership or responsibility was not demonstrated, that is the reason why the laws are coming in. The Data Protection Act or the GDPR have been evolved because organizations have found ways and means to not own up the data. So from that point of view, I think that data has definitely, the organizations have to own up the security of the data that is there with them, regardless of whether it is backed by any law, regardless of whether any kind of an agreement is signed by the customer, regardless of whether they are responsible to their vendors or not. Because today data is the new oil, data is the new ammunition, and anyone can be hit by any kind of data. So from that point of view, I think the organization have to own it up. But at the same time, we must also understand that it is a chicken and egg situation. The data for the organization is only as much worth as much the revenue that data can fetch for the organization. So much of data has to be accumulated by the organization because of the regulatory requirements. Now, Anti-Money Laundering Act requires you to keep the data of 10 years. Income Tax Department wants you to keep the data of 7 years. Likewise, there are many regulators who ask you to keep the data anywhere between the range of 5 years to 10 years. Now, hosting so much of data, accumulating and keeping it, and above that, the Data Protection Act, the Data Privacy Act, which is coming up, is also having so many other provisions that I, as an individual, can go and ask my data and transactions for last n years from any organization. So even if I have done one transaction on Flipkart 10 years back, I can go to Flipkart today and say, I want that transaction. I can ask Flipkart to delete that transaction. I can ask Flipkart whom all he has shared that particular transaction. That's a big overhead. That's a big burden. And so that is the reason why the organizations definitely are going to look at this data more critically. But at the same time, we must also acknowledge that this kind of laws, this kind of acts are going to put a lot of burden on the organization. It is possible that to adhere these provisions, to adhere to the legal requirements, the cost of the service, the cost of the product may also go up. So that is what I would like to say.
All right. So you got to be prepared for everything. Yash, in conclusion, what would you like to say? I mean, data will have a life of its own. It looks like it, with the amount that is being generated and the responsibility that goes with it. So how do you ensure everything works spick and span?
Sure. I'll just reiterate what I said before, that security is not a one-time thing, and security is something which companies need to work continuously and always try to be a step ahead of what is happening in the world around, and it's a continuous thing. Ensure that you're following all the security measures to the maximum. Keep regularly doing that. Also, remember that security is as strong as the weakest link. So also have programs where you're actually educating the employees in your company about security, and that's what I would end with.
All right. A big thank you to all of you for joining us today and sharing with us your views on how to secure data assets, which will be, of course, very critical going ahead. Big thank you to Mr. Mungale, Yash, Sunil, Mr. Navaneethan. Thank you so much for joining us today, sparing the time and sharing your insights with us. It's a pleasure to have you with us on this discussion.